Hi everyone, it's Emily, and for today's video, I wanted to talk about modern physical game collecting, specifically around physical games that require internet access, additional patches, and digital downloads in order to function properly. Now, as a physical game collector, this has been something I've been trying to be a bit more mindful about, especially when selecting titles to add to my physical game library. Now, there are plenty of arguments about why maybe digital might be better than physical games, and I'm not here to argue that today, but my collecting style is I really enjoy collecting games that I intend to play or to replay in the future. And unfortunately, with the recent trend of new games coming out, a lot of games will not be playable if all the servers were taken down or if something were to change in the distant future. Now, there are certainly plenty of physical games that are very upfront about their limitations and how they might be a little less desirable towards collectors. For example, there are certain games that I think do a decent job at explicitly stating that downloads are required in order to play the game off the cart, such as the Spyro Reignited trilogy. It has this logo down here that the download is required in order to play all 3 games. Now, unfortunately, you cannot always rely on the physical box art to indicate whether or not there are required downloads. For example, there were plenty of listings that sometimes conveniently just erase the download requirement logos on the game art. And even when buying games in person, you can't always rely on the game cover to explicitly state whether or not there are downloads required. For example, the Final Fantasy X and X-2 collection on the Switch, unfortunately, the second game, X-2, is a download code only. But if you did buy the Asian English version, both games are on the cart. But nowhere on here does that indicate is the same case. Similarly, with the Nier Automata Game of the Year edition, in order to get the DLC, you have to actually download the code that's provided inside. And nowhere on this game case is that indicated. So this is only a piece of the puzzle when it comes to understanding whether or not games require downloads on the get-go in order to play them. With many modern releases, there are continual number of patches that fix various game-breaking bugs or just help enhance the performance in order to have a better playing experience that you also need to go through and are not usually explicitly stated when you're purchasing a game. Now, as collectors, I think these are important aspects to be aware of, especially if you intend on playing your games for a long time. Now, I found 2 good resources that actually kind of help aid us in understanding which games have these added requirements in order to play them nicely, or if there are some sort of game-breaking bugs or other fixes that were patched over down the line. So I made a previous video talking about revised game cards and how to identify them. And I'm going to take that information and also build upon it in some new information that I've since received when making that video. So for those who are unfamiliar with the topic, a revised game cartridge is one that has gone through a new print run release and the software is updated to the actual physical game card itself. And there's no additional requirements that you need to download when you insert the game card into your Switch. So most of the Nintendo first-party IPs usually go through a revision of some sorts if there were any additional patches made post-launch. And the only way to identify these without actually inserting the game into your Nintendo Switch is to flip the game over and look at the serial number in the back. So all the initial releases will have a serial number ending in 000, and each revision will then add a 1 to the game card. So I've seen some revisions go up to 006 that went through 6 different revisions. And that's the physical copy you have now. This is the case with my Xenoblade Chronicles 2 physical game card. And the reason why I think these are kind of desirable to own in your collection, especially as a collector who likes to play their games and hopes to play them in the future, is that you have that reassurance you own the most up-to-date game that you could play offline and doesn't require any additional patches. So in case the Nintendo eShop servers close for whatever reason, if we seek, I guess, a new age when it comes to console gaming, you'll know that you'll be able to play the most up-to-date game on your Switch if ever that time does come. There are of course plenty of other issues I won't get into when it comes to physical game collecting and the lifespan of these physical game cards. And with how Nintendo has used the flash saving mechanisms, there is a short lifespan for that if you do not use your game cards. It does deteriorate over time. So I talked about these revised game cartridges in a previous video before, linking to this blog post. And since making that video, I've had some of the collaborators who were part of that blog post talk about how they've expanded into a Facebook group, which I'll link down below, and they have this really large spreadsheet that they constantly revise with new updated information on revised cartridges. So I'm going to link all those down below, and they're really, I think, useful tools just to understand what the most recent patches are. If you own a physical game that may have a game-breaking bug in it that requires additional patches online in order to function well. So if you're looking to curate a collection of physical games that will function and work properly despite any sort of internet access, I think this is a very invaluable resource to look at. So for me, I found this very eye-opening, and it sort of changed the way I went about collecting for the Nintendo Switch. So a lot of the first-party titles I kind of put on the back burner, especially if it's not a game I want to play day one, waiting to see if there's going to be an iterative or patched over revised game cart to purchase down the line. I've also found it very helpful for knowing which third-party developers also do the revised game cart options for their titles too. Now there's this other website that I've found recently that's called Does It Play, and they also have a Twitter account that I follow, and they've been slowly going through a lot of their PlayStation games as well as some other console games to kind of identify whether or not one, a game requires internet access in order to play it, and two, if there's any sort of important downloadable content that needs to be downloaded in order to play and work properly. So this is a rather ambitious project, and I think they've only done just under 1,400 game reviews so far. But I've actually managed to find a few titles that have really kind of helped me understand whether or not I want to have a game on a certain system or to maybe to upgrade for something else. For example, I own the PS4 version of Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I think in a video talking about how I wanted to upgrade this to a PS5 version, and I had a few comments telling me that I get a free PS5 upgrade and I really probably should just hold on to the game I already own instead of try to go for the physical PS5 version. And what was interesting on this website is that they tested the PS4 version for 7's Remake, both on a PS5 model, PS4 Pro, and also the base PS5 Integrate version, and did a nice, I think, breakdown of the differences. So one of the things they found was that if you do play Final Fantasy VII Remake, the PS4 version on a PS5, the game will more often than not crash immediately after it launches. So there's a lot of issues playing the PS4 version on the base PS5 system. Whereas if I were to purchase the PS5 Remake Integrate version, that doesn't have the same issues though. Just like with the PS4 version, the DLC is still a download requirement and not on the disc. So I really like how this website is very clear about whether a game could be played offline or not, and if there's any DLC or download requirements. And they also have a nice short section just talking about any issues that they may have encountered during their playthrough. Another interesting thing I found that it's actually contradictory to what was listed on the revised game cartridges spreadsheet was that the limited run game Shantae for the Switch also had some issues. So the spreadsheet showed that this game was complete on the cart with no issues, whereas the Does It Play website indicated that there were some saving issues. So while the game is 100% complete on the cart, they encountered some issues where a lot of their save states were just permanently erased and almost kind of forgotten about. So I really do appreciate that they do point out these sort of known issues that they encounter and mark those as yellow when scrolling through the website. So I'm really excited to see this website grow, and they also have some Xbox games, and I think I saw some Vita and PS3 titles that have been reviewed. So I'm really excited to see just how many more games are reviewed extensively on this site to kind of help collectors know what games are really kind of worth keeping in their collections from a playable standpoint. And the last resource I wanted to mention in this video is one around the PS5. And since I recently just purchased the PS5, I've been a bit more conscious about which games from the PS4 library are compatible with the PS5, rather than just that list that I think Sony provided at one point. There have been a few other known issues that some games have encountered. For example, the Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 2 game has a known bug that can totally just stop your progression. So this Reset Era website shows this known issue and also some potential ways to get around it. So for those who are also PS5 collectors, this website might be helpful for you as well. So those are the 3 resources that I found that I think are really helpful when it comes to figuring out which games require additional downloads or the internet access in order to play them. And unfortunately, I don't have too much information regarding Xbox games. I tried to look a little bit, but it's not a system I collect for. And if anyone has any good resources that they've managed to find that are willing to link them down below, I'd love to learn more about it. Unfortunately, I think when it comes to a lot of modern Xbox collecting, a lot of it does require internet access and downloading from a server rather than the games just being available on the disc itself. Again, it's not really a topic I'm too familiar with right now, and I think if I do decide to collect for Xbox systems, that's something I'll definitely dive more into and maybe make an update video on. But regardless, I hope this video was helpful for those interested in collecting Nintendo Switch or modern PlayStation games. And I guess I should say this caveat that it's totally fine if you decide to buy games that do have all these additional requirements in order to play them. Like in my collection, I'll be keeping Final Fantasy 15, among others that require the internet or additional downloads in order to play them properly. I just wanted to put this video out there to spread more information about this topic because I've noticed that a lot of people are unaware about, for example, the Switch game cart revisions, as well as how many games there are that you can't play straight out of a game case like we could have back in the day. So I do think information's king, so I hope you guys found the information provided here helpful, and I hope to do more stuff on this topic because I think it's a really interesting facet when it comes to game collecting that really isn't emphasized enough, at least here on YouTube. With all that said, I hope you guys again enjoyed this one, and until my next video, bye guys.